The house was full, but she felt completely alone. Voices echoed from every corner, mixing with the sound of cups clinking and chairs being dragged across the floor. Relatives had arrived early, dressed neatly, speaking in low, serious tones. Everyone knew why they were here. It was not a celebration. It was a decision day. She sat on the edge of the sofa, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes stayed on the floor because every time she looked up, someone was watching her. Some faces showed concern, others impatience. A few carried quiet judgment. No one asked how she felt. They only asked if she was ready. For months, the pressure had been building. At first, it came as gentle reminders, then suggestions, then warnings. She was told time was passing. She was told people were talking. She was told this was how life worked and that resisting would only make things harder. Each conversation ended the same way, with her silence taken as agreement. Men had been discussed like options on a list, their jobs, their families, their income, their reputation. She listened from the other room as her future was reduced to details that had nothing to do with her heart. Whenever she tried to speak, she was told not to be emotional, not to think too much, not to make things difficult. That morning, the final message was clear. Today, she would choose, or someone else would choose for her. As the living room filled, she noticed the small things more than the people. The curtain that never closed properly, the cracked tile near the door, the quiet footsteps moving back and forth, cleaning, fixing, arranging. The caretaker moved through the house like a shadow, present but unnoticed. He kept his head down, focused on his work, respectful and silent. She had seen him many times before. He never stared, never asked questions. When he spoke, it was simple and kind, a greeting, an offer of help, nothing more. In a house where everyone demanded something from her, his presence felt strangely calm. A voice called her name. She looked up. The room went quiet. Someone explained again what was expected of her, as if she had not heard it 100 times already. She nodded, though her chest felt tight. Her choice would decide the rest of her life, yet she felt like a guest in her own story. As the men sat waiting, confident and sure, she felt a deep tiredness settle in her bones. Not fear, not anger, just exhaustion. And for the first time, she wondered what would happen if she stopped trying to please everyone else. Outside, the caretaker paused near the doorway, holding a broom, unaware that his quiet existence was about to matter more than anyone could imagine. The gathering did not end quickly. People stayed, talked, and watched her closely, as if she might suddenly run away. She moved through the house when asked, serving tea, listening to comments about herself spoken as if she were not there. Every smile she gave felt heavy, forced into place out of habit. Later in the afternoon, she stepped outside for a moment of air. The noise faded behind her, replaced by distant traffic and the soft sound of sweeping. The caretaker was in the courtyard, clearing fallen leaves near the wall. He worked slowly, carefully, as if there was no rush in the world. She stood there longer than she meant to. He noticed her presence but did not stare. He simply nodded, a small respectful gesture, then went back to his work. Something about that simple moment eased the tightness in her chest. She did not feel like she was being measured or judged. After a while, she spoke first. She asked if the work was difficult. He smiled slightly and said, no, it was honest work. His voice was calm, steady, without any need to impress. He mentioned how he had worked in many places and learned to fix things little by little. Nothing about his words felt rehearsed. Their conversation stayed light. He talked about repairs, about keeping places clean, about how people treated spaces better when they felt respected. She listened closely, surprised by how thoughtful he sounded. No one inside had spoken about care or respect all day. When someone called her from inside, she flinched. The caretaker noticed and quietly stepped back, giving her space. Before she left, he said she should not let the noise around her drown out her own voice. The words were simple, but they stayed with her. That evening, the house finally emptied. Only close family remained. The mood grew heavier. Questions turned sharper. She was asked which man she liked more, who seemed suitable, who would keep her safe. Each question felt like a trap. She gave vague answers, buying time she did not really have. Later, alone in her room, she replayed the day in her mind. The confident smiles of the men, the expectations in every adult's eyes, and then the quiet presence of the caretaker, who had asked for nothing at all. She realized something that unsettled her. Not once had anyone asked what kind of life she wanted. They asked what kind of husband she would accept. The difference felt painful and clear. From her window, she saw the caretaker locking the gate, finishing his work for the day. He stretched his tired back and glanced at the house, then walked away without looking back. In that moment, she understood how rare it was to meet someone who did not try to own her future. Sleep came slowly that night. Tomorrow they would expect an answer, and for the first time she felt that the choice might truly belong to her. The next morning arrived too quickly. The house was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. She washed her face and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes looked tired, but there was something new there too, a steadiness she had never seen before. By midday, the living room was prepared again. Chairs were arranged neatly. The men returned, sitting straight, confident, already certain of the outcome. Family members took their places, whispering softly, reminding her to behave properly, to think wisely, to not embarrass anyone. Each word pressed down on her like weight. She sat where she was told, hands resting on her knees. Her heart beat fast, but her thoughts were clear. For once, she knew what she did not want. That alone felt like strength. One by one, the men spoke. They talked about responsibility, tradition, stability. They promised protection, comfort, respect, but their eyes spoke louder than their words. They looked at her as something to manage, something to fit into their lives, not someone to walk beside. Each speech sounded the same, polite, empty. When they finished, the room turned toward her. All eyes waited. Someone cleared their throat and told her to make her choice. There was no softness in the request. It was an order. Her hands trembled slightly as she stood. The room felt smaller. She could hear her own breathing. For a moment, fear tried to rise again, reminding her of consequences, of anger, of disappointment. But another feeling pushed back, calm. She looked at the men sitting in front of her. Then her gaze moved past them toward the doorway. The caretaker was there, standing quietly, having been asked to fix something near the entrance. He froze when he realized everyone was looking in his direction. The room gasped when she raised her hand. She pointed. Not toward the men seated proudly before her, but toward the caretaker by the door. For a few seconds, no one spoke. It was as if the air itself had stopped moving. Then voices exploded at once. Shock, anger, laughter that did not hide its cruelty. Someone demanded to know if this was a joke. Her voice shook at first, but she did not lower her hand. She said she had made her choice. She said she would not choose someone who saw her as a duty or a prize. She wanted someone who knew how to care without being asked. The caretaker tried to step back, his face pale, clearly uncomfortable. He said nothing, only shook his head, as if to say, this could not be real. She turned to him and asked him to stay, just for a moment. The room argued around them, but she felt strangely steady. For the first time, the decision was hers, and no matter what happened next, she knew she had spoken the truth out loud. The room did not calm down after her choice. Voices grew louder, overlapping, sharp with disbelief. Some people stood up, others pointed, a few shook their heads as if they had just witnessed something shameful. She stayed where she was, shoulders straight, even though her heart felt like it might break through her chest. Questions were thrown at her without pause. Was she thinking clearly? Did she understand what she had done? Was she trying to disgrace everyone? Each word landed hard, but she did not step back. She had expected anger. What surprised her was how quickly respect disappeared when she stopped obeying. The caretaker stood frozen near the door. He kept his eyes low, clearly uncomfortable being at the center of attention. Someone demanded to know why he was even standing there. Another told him to leave at once. He took a step back, ready to disappear the way he always had. She spoke again, louder this time. She said he had done nothing wrong. She said the room was full of people who talked about honor and values, yet could not show basic kindness. Her words were not angry. They were tired, honest, and firm. Someone laughed and said feelings did not matter, only sense. She answered that sense without humanity was empty. She said she would not spend her life feeling small just to keep others comfortable. The room went quiet, not because they agreed, but because they did not expect her to keep speaking. The caretaker finally lifted his head. He said softly that he never meant to be part of this. He said he respected her courage, but did not want to cause more trouble for her. His voice carried no pride, only concern for her well-being. She looked at him and said that for the first time, someone was thinking about what was best for her instead of themselves. That was why she trusted him. The discussion dragged on for hours. Threats were made. Consequences were explained. Distance, silence, and shame were placed in front of her like warnings. Each one hurt, but none felt worse than the life she was being asked to accept. As evening fell, the energy in the room changed. Some people grew tired of arguing. Others avoided her eyes. A few looked at her with something close to understanding. Not approval, but recognition. When the caretaker was finally asked to leave, she walked with him to the gate. Neither of them spoke at first. The air outside felt lighter. He told her she did not owe him anything. She said she knew. That made all the difference.
As the gate closed behind him, she returned inside alone. The house felt colder, quieter, but for the first time in her life, she felt taller, as if standing in her own truth had given her strength she never knew she had. The days that followed were quieter than she expected. The house no longer buzzed with visitors or opinions. Some family members avoided her, others spoke only when needed. The silence was painful, but it was also honest. She no longer had to pretend everything was fine.
She focused on small routines. Morning light through the window, helping in the kitchen, sitting alone with her thoughts without being interrupted. For the first time, her life felt slow enough to hear herself think. The fear did not disappear, but it no longer controlled her. A few days later, she saw the caretaker again. He came to return a set of keys and collect his final pay. Their meeting was simple, almost awkward. No big words, no promises. He asked how she was doing, really asked, and waited for her answer. That mattered more than anything. She told him the truth, that things were hard, that she did not know what would happen next. He nodded and said uncertainty was better than living a lie. He said he admired her strength, not because she chose him, but because she chose herself. The sign. They began to talk more after that, slowly, carefully. Sometimes it was about work, sometimes about life. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people learning what respect felt like in real time. Trust grew in quiet ways, through consistency, not words. At home, change came in small steps. One relative softened, another stopped criticizing. No one apologized, but the tension eased. They saw that she had not fallen apart. She was calmer, more present, strong in a way they had not expected. The caretaker found steady work nearby. She supported him when she could, and he did the same for her. Their bond was not built on approval from others, but on shared understanding. They listened to each other. They disagreed without fear. They stood side by side. One evening, as they walked past the same gate where everything had shifted, she realized something important. Her choice had not solved all her problems. Life was still complicated. People were still imperfect. But she no longer felt trapped inside someone else's idea of who she should be. She had learned that dignity does not come from status or tradition. It comes from being seen, being heard, and being allowed to choose. The world around her did not change overnight, but she had. And that change was enough to begin a life that finally felt like her own.